All right, so here's an update on this weather system we briefed yesterday afternoon. What's changed since the webinar yesterday afternoon? The Hurricane Center has started issuing advisories on potential tropical cyclone 1. What that means is there is a system that hasn't fully formed yet, but that may bring some tropical storm force winds to the coast. You can see a satellite image here from this morning, kind of a large area of low pressure, no real storms around the center of circulation. There is a hurricane hunter flying in there right now, very disorganized still. But notice on the satellite, the thunderstorms on the northern flank of that, even across the northern Gulf. So as we said yesterday, whether this thing forms or not is almost irrelevant to our forecast impacts here in Southeast Texas, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. We are expecting a period of rain, heavy at times, starting tonight and continuing into Wednesday night, and also already getting some elevated tides. Those are just going to get a bit higher. And also marines in the marine areas, high seas, high surf. Couple things to note here. On the left-hand side, notice this is the 7-day graphical tropical weather outlook. It's a bit confusing because we have the red X showing where potential tropical cyclone 1 is, but there's also a development area drawn for the days 3 through 7 period. So yes, we are expecting another system to form possibly in the same area as we get into the weekend. So stay tuned for that. This briefing, of course, will focus on the current system that we're facing now, which on the right-hand side, you can see that it's forecast to track pretty quickly on into Mexico, should be on land by Wednesday evening, likely as a tropical storm at that point. It would be the A storm if it were to form. Even though the center is tracking way to our south, as I mentioned, it's almost immaterial to our forecast because we're experiencing a strong gradient between this system and high pressure to the north. So that's giving us our impacts primarily, along with a influx of tropical moisture. Here's a look at our rainfall forecast. It's quite similar to yesterday. You can see the higher amounts generally south of I-10, and there may be a sharp gradient on the northern side. Again, looking at pretty much 4 to 8 inches south of I-10, lesser amounts as you go further north. And as we said yesterday, we could have some higher amounts. We're going to have to watch for any sort of banding as this system comes in. As you know, we can get these bands of storms that sit over one area for a while, and they can give us those locally higher amounts. Here's a recent model run, which actually runs through Thursday morning. So this is just one model's version of things, showing total rainfall from this one model. Again, don't focus on the details here, but it's consistent with the forecast I just showed. Pretty consistent, mainly 4 to 8 inches south of I-10, a sharp gradient on the north side. Notice some of these streaks of yellow in bands down the coast. Those areas maybe 10 to 15 inches. So what I want to caution folks is it's not out of the question. We could get a band like that even up into our forecast area. If we do, it's more likely going to be areas, our southwest zones, basically south of I-10 and a little bit southwest of the Houston area. This is meant to give you some idea of the timing of this. Again, don't focus on the exact details, but it does show the progression of the rainfall with this system. These are basically future radar predictions from this HER model, And you can see 7 p.m. Tuesday, a big mass of rain and thunderstorms just offshore. By 7 a.m. Wednesday, that has come on shore with the higher rain rates down the coast somewhat. 7 p.m. Tuesday, this big mass of rain is working its way from east to west across the region, with the heaviest rains, again, in this model down the coast. And then by 7 a.m. Thursday, finally, we should see the bulk of the heavier rain out of our forecast areas. So again, it's mostly a Tuesday night through Wednesday night event. As the rain progresses from east to west, Wednesday night, it will end east to west as well. Based on all of this, the forecast rain and some higher rainfall rates, we are looking at level 3 risk for flash flooding. That's what's shown here. The Tuesday map is really for the rainfall tonight primarily, and then Wednesday that moderate risk level 3 continues, again mainly for I-10 on south. Now we do have some risk further north as well, so that gives you an idea of the flash flood risk that we expect the next few days. And we still have the flash flood watch in effect. Now, areas, north of I-10, in this case, particularly, say, Washington County, they're going to be on the edge of the heavier rain. So we're going to leave Washington County in. But the higher rain totals at this point, and that could change, appear to be shifting more south, near and south of I-10, as a greater risk of flash flooding. Just kind of going through some of our warnings and advisories. We do have a rip current risk at the coast, coastal flooding due to high tides. Even though the center tracks way south, like I say, it's not so much that system itself giving us the high tides. It's more the long fetch of wind across the Gulf near tropical storm force. So we're looking at beach inundation, meaning depth of water at the beaches of 2 to 4 feet above ground. And I'll show you some of the tidal model output in a moment. May see water washing over low-lying roadways, talking about blue water, 87, for example, around times of high tide. Beach access will be impassable around times of high tide. Already seeing some rising tide levels, as we spoke of yesterday. Dangerous swimming conditions, don't want anyone out in the surf zone with these dangerous currents. This shows the peak surge forecast from the Hurricane Center. This wasn't available yesterday, but this is what the surge unit is putting out. And we're talking about, as said on the previous slide, 2 to 4 feet above normally dry ground on the beaches, for example. So again, this is a great example of how the center track almost doesn't matter for this event. The highest surge is going to be in our area, not so much close to the center. So this is not your typical tropical type setup. Here's this timeline showing water levels from this surge model for Bay Entrance. And you can use this kind of as a guide for other areas as well. We're near that. We've gone through the high tide cycle this morning. We're kind of in that now, and we're seeing some high tide levels up between 3 and 4 feet above mean lower low water. But notice the next high tide expected late tonight and tomorrow morning is expected to be a good 1.5 feet higher. Maybe 4.5, even 5 feet above mean lower low water. The datum of reference here is mean lower low water, where we have some impacts associated. And if you look at the table below, these are some of those impacts. You can see parts of Highway 87 becoming impassable around 4.5 feet, and even FM 562 northeast of Smith Point starts to experience some flooding, and you can see some other impacts in the table below. Looking at the marine area, tropical storm warning is in effect for the marine areas, excluding Galveston Bay, where we do have a small craft advisory there. Includes Matagorda Bay. We are looking at sustained winds 25 to 35 knots, so that's very much low level, low end tropical storm, but we will see some gusts potentially even as high as 50 knots in the tropical storm warning area. Here's a look at the maximum wave heights in the marine area, 10 to 12 feet in the nearshore waters, and as high as 15 feet as we go offshore further. Again, just focusing on some of the marine impacts. This is more of a timeline. You can see those wave heights, and this is a sample point about 60 miles off the coast. Those wave heights peaking up around 15 feet tonight and tomorrow, then gradually dropping off on Thursday. And you can see the winds, near tropical storm force from the east primarily. Some of those winds will, of course, be felt at the coast as well. We do have a wind advisory up for all of our coastal counties. Now, I do want to alert you, there is a chance that the tropical storm warning could be extended up into our area for coastal winds. But nonetheless, the impacts should be the same, whether it's a wind advisory or a tropical storm warning as far as the winds go. And now I'm going to hand this the briefing over to Katie, who's going to talk a little bit about the tributaries and the rivers. Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So just as a reminder, the current forecasts that are on the new water.noaa.gov website, those only include 24 hours of the forecasted rainfall. And as Dan mentioned, we're extending, the time frame for the heaviest rainfall well into Wednesday evening time frame. So I went ahead and threw in a 72-hour contingency forecast slide here just to show you the potential river flood threat throughout the entirety of the event. As you can see, we're anticipating minor to moderate river flooding, specifically on the Lavaca, Navidad, San Bernard River basins. We're also needing to monitor the tributaries of the lower portion of the Colorado and the Brazos, as well as Liberty and Lost Bluff on the Trinity. There is the potential for isolated major river flooding where we have some of those heavier bands set up, in particular, concern being Matagorda and Brazoria County over into Galveston County. Some coastal bayous we're monitoring, some of the new gauges in those areas, specifically Austin Bayou, Linville Bayou, Juanita Creek, and Highland Bayou. If you have questions about those new gauges, let us know. And then as far as the Houston Bayou system goes, we're going to need to monitor where those heaviest bands set up, wherever we get some banding. They're right on the tight gradient, so it's not out of the question that we could see some issues on the southern portion of the county, specifically along Clear Creek, Armand Bayou, a couple of those locations. But right now, this is kind of what we're looking at for the overall river flood potential. Just be sure to monitor the updated forecasts as they get updated every 6 hours as we go through this event.
All right, thank you, Katie. Just some takeaways here. Not a whole lot has changed since yesterday. The timing of the rainfall may be pushed back just a bit and extending a bit longer. Of course, we do have tropical storm warnings now in effect for the marine areas and coastal flood warnings. So those things have changed. We've gone through the progression from watch to warning. The impacts, again, flash flooding potentially, perhaps some river and bayou flooding, as Katie talked about, some gusty winds, and coastal flooding too, based on the high tides.